So here's a preview of our Heart Dissection Lab. All of our dissection labs start off with a safety page that has a couple cool videos that introduce students to common dissection tools and their purposes, what they'll be used for, and also demonstrates safety techniques so students are aware of the proper techniques to use during the lab. Another way we prepare students before diving into the lab is to give them, of course, a full list of the materials that they'll need to have gathered before starting, and also a photograph of exactly what their workstation needs to look like before they start dissecting away tissue. If you've ever done an anatomy dissection before, you're probably familiar with a very long line of instructions, all the dissections that you'll have to do, paired with a really long list of structures that you need to identify. And that can be a little bit overwhelming to be presented with all of that at one go. So one of my favorite things about how these labs are organized is that they've been broken down into little discrete anatomical dissections. So this page just focuses on the pericardium, but as you can see here, we've got a page that just focuses on the anterior side of the external heart. Same with posterior. I'll show you the aorta and ventricle page, left ventricle. So this is kind of what every dissection page, the structure looks like. All of our dissections are aligned with the HAPS learning outcomes. HAPS is Human Anatomy and Physiology Society, and they have these national standards of learning outcomes that students should know once they exit an Anatomy 1 course. So those are linked, that students can refer to them there. And here's our list of dissection procedure instructions. You can see it's quite short, and it's also paired with a video that walks them through each of the steps. So not only can students refer to the list, they can also watch this video, pause it, rewind, fast forward, speed it up, and get to see exactly what they're meant to be doing. And these videos also help them learn the proper dissection technique so they can remain safe, and also helps them to identify some of those structures that maybe they haven't seen before. So in addition to these videos, we have a little structure identification section. So this is paired with a structure checklist, which you see this table at the bottom. Those are all the structures that need to be identified on this page. And our little structure identification pages here show photographs of the sheep tissue, which we're using in the dissection, and it has highlighted, color-coded, outlined the boundaries of each of the structures that they're meant to find. So it can be kind of tricky to figure out where structures end and where they begin. So these are really helpful in supporting students' learning of those new structures. And then at the end of the page, they're presented with a test your learning section. So as I said before, we're using sheep tissue for a dissection. The test your learning section can have a mix of sheep tissue photographs and human tissue photographs. So even if your lab doesn't have access to human cadaver labs, they can kind of get exposed to what that tissue would look like in these dissection labs because we have kind of comparative photos. So a lot of these are labeling tasks. So this would ask students to label the different structures here, figure out where those structures are in the photographs taken from different angles, so students kind of have to put on their critical thinking caps and reinforce that knowledge that they've just learned on this page or even on previous pages. We have a couple things that match structure and function, ask questions about that, and then we round out the pages with a discussion section that compares our sheep tissue with what human tissue looks like and asks students to compare and contrast the features that they were looking at on the page. So that's a typical dissection page. We also have a couple other pages towards the end of the lab. I'll take you to the review and integration page. This again is helping them reinforce the anatomical concepts that they've learned and figure out the relationships, how things sit together within the body, and ask them some critical thinking questions about structure and function. And then we help them clean up, which is always important for educators. And finally, we have a clinical application page that kind of brings the whole dissection to life. So if your students are asking, why do I need to know this structure? This is a great page for them because they're presented with multiple scenarios where somebody comes in, they're having these symptoms, and students need to apply the knowledge that they've learned and figure out what in the anatomy might be a little off, what could be going wrong. And they're paired with, again, questions, some real lab results, and also some pretty cool illustrations that show the different concepts that they're learning. So this is an example of what you can expect to see when you check out one of our dissection labs. We hope you like it and hope you take a look at them. Thanks.